Welcome to the Women in Vinyl podcast with Jen DiEugenio, founder of Women in Vinyl, and contributor Robin Raymond. This podcast facilitates conversations with those working in the vinyl record industry to educate, demystify, and diversify the vinyl community.
Thank you for joining the Women in Vinyl podcast. This episode is being released right before the second Record Store Day drop, and we're lucky to be talking to Lisa Foster of Guestroom Records in Louisville, Kentucky. Thanks for joining us, Lisa.
Thank you all so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about record stores.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, thanks for giving us a moment of sanity in between World War I and World War II again for 2021 with this like crazy resurgence back into normalcy.
Yeah. It's wild times.
And when we did your blog interview, it was like right during the pandemic.
Yeah, that was early, right? That was April, right?
Yeah.
When it should have been Record Store Day.
Of the year that shall not be named.
Yeah, no. The event that shall not be named, and then it broke into 3 events, and then now it's 2, and there's just so many Record Store Day babies in the middle of the pandemic. But yeah, no, I was reflecting on that because that was a really wild, scary time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to tell us about your wild and scary time.
Well, at the beginning, I think so many people just had to close their doors and say, well, I think we really thought it was going to be about a 2-week thing, or, some of us were like, okay, no, I'm going to be reasonable. This is probably going to be 6 weeks to 3 months, and it very quickly became something where we were looking down this rabbit hole of a brand new way of figuring out how to do business. Yeah. And that is ultimately, I think, what gave us strength and also why it was scary. Because figuring out how to do business as a brick and mortar record store when you can't be open to the public is a brand new situation. And you want to continue to find your regular customers and serve them. But you also know in that moment you have to expand past that regular customer base and try and find people elsewhere too that might support you and your community, and build websites overnight and figure out how to sell things online and still be rooted as a brick and mortar store. So it was a lot of, growing in that moment and growing through it and trying to stay afloat as a store. And then ultimately reading every single CDC announcement and medical blog and research that was coming out, just like, okay, how much bleach do we need? And
how much do we need to dip all of our people in bleach before we can actually put them in the store?
And we, at the time, we were wiping down every single box. We would spray every package that came into the store with bleach. We wiped down every single album before it left someone's hands. It was just so wild during those days where we felt like touch was such a huge way in which we could maybe get this virus, because we're in a very touchy business, right? Yeah. That's what record stores do. So it was a true turn of events when we started to be able to know that we could wear a mask and shop safely, distance, and know that contact or touch wasn't the main way in which people were getting the thing that shall not be named. But that let us really be like, okay, touching is less of an issue. Our customers are kind and they're welcoming and they're working with each other and they're keeping their distance and they're willing to wait outside, and okay, we've got this. But yeah, the very beginning of it was, how in the heck are we going to be a record store in this climate? Wow.
Did you guys sell online before all of that happened, or were you just primarily all just
No, you're a brick and mortar.
Small online presence. So I was just like, hey, everybody, here's our Instagram. Pew, pew.
Sure. We hadn't even linked our Instagram to our webpage where like now I can tag a product, put it in, you can buy it tonight, live, I figured it out. But no, at the time, that's the beauty of like local community stores is that you really have enough walk-up traffic that you're not trying to sell to everyone everywhere because those people are often getting taken care of by their local record stores. And, it's always been sort of a very geographically specific, sometimes even a neighborhood specific place. Totally. Like in Louisville, we have record stores by neighborhood. So when, you couldn't be out and you couldn't be public, for me, that was the hardest part of the pandemic besides the obvious losses that we all went through. It was just like the assault on public life that it became. But that's very much what the store was. We were just a public space. And so then we had to figure out, okay, how do we maintain a public space, but now in an online environment? So we had a website, but we mostly sold just Guestroom merch. So you could get gift certificates, or mugs, or like cute stuff, or send us an email. But if you were looking for a new release, we were just like, yeah, we'll have it. Come on in.
Right. How much?
Come touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much of this do you think that you're going to carry into post COVID life?
Well, we're doing it now. So we put up new releases every single week. We don't put 100% of them up, but we continue to serve the website. We don't have our entire store inventory online. There's a lot of stores that stayed closed to the public a lot longer than we did. Yeah. And they found themselves in a position where they really needed to put most of their inventory online. We were fortunate. We didn't have to do that. We reopened after about 3.5 months.
Oh, great.
That's great.
Yeah. So we were only closed for about 3.5 months, and then we opened with very limited capacity. So no more than 6 people at a time in the shop.
I mean, I love a concierge record store moment. I'm like, we just came because I'm in Canada, right? And we just exited the longest longest lockdown in all of North America. Like 3 days ago. So now you can finally like go back into stores in still limited capacity, but I've been so busy making records that I have no time to go shop for them. So I'm like anxiously anticipating the moment where I get to like back into the space and be like, oh my God, there's still only 6 people in here. I love this. Don't touch those, they're mine. Like, I love that. I love that moment.
Yeah. It was, I went through a lot of, are we doing the right thing? Should we be closed? Are we doing other things okay? You go back and forth with yourself so much. But one of the things that became abundantly clear is that people needed sort of a safe space, as safe as possible to be in. Mm-hmm. And we had so much positive feedback thanking us for what I felt like was a little OCD, but like wiping and spraying, and trying to keep people safe. And then also giving you at least like 15 minutes where you could come in and get a record and say hi and go home like the rest of the world. And the early days, that's what it was. But I think we all sort of needed a little bit of normalcy. And I'm glad that the record store got to be a part of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's so important. I mean, we didn't go out at all until we were fully vaccinated as far as record shopping. And I mean, now since we've been able to go back out, it's just so nice to have that. It is a little strange to not have to wear a mask in some cases. Yeah. And then, you're standing next to people and you're like, is this safe now? I don't know. Mm-hmm. So trusting science.
We didn't go, and we're not mask free still. We basically, I was really busy. It's busy now, which we can talk about. But I took my mask required signs that were all nice and like graphically designed. And I just had a Post-it note one day and I was like, recommended. Because when the state laws changed over, we were like, okay, now the state, our state had done a really nice job. We felt like it kind of giving good public guidance. They're like, these laws are gone. We're going to continue to wear masks because we see a lot of people. Yeah. And this is still very odd and weird, but you don't have to. But it's weird, after being masked up for 18 months, seeing people shopping without them is definitely, it's odd, but it is also one of those things that I feel safe enough to do at this point.
That's good. I mean, and it's kind of like one of those things about like leading by example, and just like showing that even if there's people that like disagree with stuff, it's just like, hey, we're doing this for the greater good, and
Absolutely.
kind of it's
and 90% of our customers were so good, and 8% were a little trickier, and then 2%, if you were working with the public during a pandemic, you just know what that last 2% was like.
I feel like that's the breakdown of like dealing with people in general. Like there's always the 2% you can just see them coming, and you're like, this isn't going to be fun for either one of us.
No, this isn't going to be good right now, but here we go. But we're so thankful. 2%. Wow, great odds. So
that's great. I mean, and being like a neighborhood store, that's probably one of the things. I mean, back home before I moved to the mighty city of Toronto, my my little town, my 1 million person town, had like, I think we have like 11 record stores in Calgary, and I mean, I would go to all of them on the regular, but I had like a person at each one of them that was like looking out for my interests. So I mean, I'm like a solo human that lives by myself, and I pretty much work in isolation. So it's been like an 18-month echo chamber and like little tiny humans on a computer screen. And I'm like that one-on-one, even just like having that one-on-one in a record store would be so important. So I mean, like, I know what that relationship is like from a customer perspective. So I can only imagine what it's like from a store owner perspective. Like, were there people that were chomping at the bit to come back, that were just like wanting that, regular interaction moment, that you were just like, oh, where's Bill? We haven't seen Bill for a while.
Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't want to map their excitement necessarily onto them. However, I can honestly say people were so stoked. So and even if it was just running in to the record store and running out, or in the early days we did a lot of curbside service, and even after we opened back up, we still did curbside, so you didn't have to come back in, but we would wave at the step, and we just needed human interaction during that time period.
Totally.
We didn't go anywhere either. We went to the store, we came home, we had one neighborhood bar that was like really on their game, and we'd go there, and that was it. And we kind of became, in a weird way, like a neighborhood bar without booze but records.
As a sober kid, I 100%. That's exactly it. Like I'm like, that's the thing, man.
Half the time we go to the bar, we're not even drinking, especially during the pandemic. It was just like, we need to be around people by a fire outside.
Right.
Especially in Kentucky. I mean, like, send me some barbecue yesterday already. What do I got to do to get a barbecue delivery around these parts? Come on.
Yeah. I've got ribs in the freezer if you need.
I'm sure you do. I feel like that's just like a regular thing.
And I am mostly vegetarian, but I've still got ribs in the freezer.
That is like a whole new topic that we're gonna have to explore.
Yeah.
Like, how are you a vegetarian in Kentucky? I feel like that's not even allowed.
Yeah. Well, I've been around some places. And vegetables are great. They grow out of the soil here, just popping
just randomly.
My garden right now. Yeah.
I love it.
Well, to back up a little bit, how did you get into this, and why vinyl specifically?
So by this record storing, or
how did you get into working at a record store?
How did you decide that it was a good idea to own a record store?
Okay, let's take that path. So I had a previous career life. I was a professor of communication studies at the University of Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
And I got my graduate degree in rhetoric and media studies at the University of Texas in Austin. And while I was working on my PhD there, I was very broke and needed extra income, and got a job at Waterloo Records and Video.
Nice.
So my very first record store job was actually at Waterloo, and it was mostly on the video side when they still had the video. And it was super fun because everybody on the record store side would just come over and talk to you about records instead of doing a lot of work. And it was so fun and such a beautiful escape from a lot of like heavy theory and teaching and things that I was doing. And it also fueled sort of my academic research, which was mostly about how music could create public spheres, right? How it is that we relate to each other, come together, form sort of civic publics by listening to music, talking about music. So then I got this job at the University of Oklahoma. I leave Texas. I wave goodbye to my record store friends. I'm sad. I'm so glad I did it. And the very first thing that I looked for with my then partner was the record store in town. There was this one tiny store not far from campus, and it was called Guestroom Records. And these two guys had opened it, and they were very young to me at the time. I'm only 5 years older than my partner, but at the time they seemed so young. And it was a brand new shop, and it was super great. And my now partner Travis had opened that store with his business partner Justin Sowers, and I shopped there for years. And the partner I had that moved with me, we broke up, we stayed friends, we went away. I said, thank you for helping me find this beautiful record store. And long time, I shopped there. I still did my teaching career and writing research. And then some things shifted in about 2008. So 2008 happens, there's a major market collapse. Jobs in higher education start just dwindling. And I liked my job, but it was a bad fit for like my research. So a lot of academics can kind of relate to that. If you don't wind up in the right departmental home, it can get really tricky. And I was this sort of soul weird humanist writing about protest and musical discourse while people were getting like lots of very large grant money to solve other kinds of issues. They were communication scientists. I was a liberal arts kid, right. At heart. So I'm like, I should get out of here. I need a different job. But I'm having a hard time getting out of here and finding a different job. And around that point in time, a friend of mine said, hey, let me set you up with someone. I was like, the last thing you want to do when you're trying to leave a place is to be set up with a human being, but sure, why not? And the person they tried to set me up with was Travis, my partner. And I was like, oh, this is just Travis from the record store? Okay, fine. Cool. I'll go out with you. I'm definitely not staying here. We can't stay together for a long time. And he's like, I just got divorced. I'm not looking for anything serious. I'm like, cool, we'll hang out. We'll talk about records. It'll be great. And, a couple years later, we're like, well, what are we going to do? Because you own this record store and I have this communication PhD career, and this is going to be really tricky to figure out. And ultimately, as we were just trying to decide how we were going to live our lives together, I was like, look, I love record stores. I love this community. The research that I've been invested in is very much a part of what we do as a store, and I'm willing to sign on to that if we can choose where we want to live. And that was sort of what we came to an agreement on. He was like, okay, I'll go. Let's go someplace new. I love the people of Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma is a wonderful place, but I'll be honest, at heart, I'm just like an east of the Mississippi River kind of person. It's different on this side of the country. I really wanted to move home, and I love my family, and they were getting older. And I was like, let's go home. And Louisville is such a great city. We thought about different places, but ultimately I wound up getting into records because it gave us a space to create the life we wanted, to do that with people we love, to give back to the community and keep our brains engaged and be a part of this wonderful city, which I adore. I was born in Louisville, but I grew up in the middle of Kentucky. So I got into record stores and owning one because I saw this moment at which I was in a career path that was having a sort of immediate crisis of funding and those kinds of things, watching vinyl sales continue to increase and knowing that this was something that I could do with my partner in a way that would be good for us and maybe good for other people.
Yeah. Was Waterloo when you started collecting records, or were you collecting prior to that?
No, I didn't start collecting records until right before Travis and I started dating. So about 2007, 2008. And I never, all my friends were burning CDs and like downloading things and putting digital files on their computers. And I have no judgment for that, but my brain does not relate to music in that way. Yeah. It never did. I grew up with like 8 tracks. I had every format, 8 tracks, cassette tapes, CDs, records, all of it as a kid. It was everywhere. And that tactile, visceral relationship to music, whatever format it was, worked for me.
Yeah.
Computers did not. So I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to continue to invest in CDs. I can tell that this is a dwindling market. But I want to continue to listen to music, and maybe I need a turntable and some records. So around 2007, 2008 is when I got a turntable and started buying records.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you get a brand new turntable, or did you get something vintage and used?
Oh no, I got a Crosley keepsake portable turntable.
I love the portable one. It's cute.
I mean, I think
It's
that
cute.
not the cruiser. No offense to the cruiser lovers of the world, but I don't love that one. But the bigger keepsake at the time, I mean, it served us really well. We were able to like listen to that. We could take it places. We could introduce people to records with it. I took it to class.
Yeah.
It was super fun when I was teaching to like introduce people to like physical media and vinyl economics and be able to take that places. It sounded great. We finally killed it, but we never got rid of it because Travis got it signed by Jay Retard at Donnerfest one year. And so
Amazing.
now the lid of it hangs in our study and forever.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's wicked.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there was a dude that would come to my favorite record store in Calgary. Shout out to Recordland, my sweet, sweet babies there. And there was a dude that would roll up there, and he had this like, it almost looked like a stapler that was like a portable record player.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, what is this man doing? Like, I literally, out of the corner of my eye, I thought it was a stapler. And I was like, what are you about to do to this record? Am I going to get into a fight in a record store? And he put it on, and he had like little headphones. And I was like, oh, that's the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life. I need 3 in all of the colors.
Yeah, we have a little Newmark one.
Yeah, I mean, I love a little portable moment. It's awesome.
Because when we used to travel, we'd always, want to listen to our records after we buy them. And yeah, nowhere has a turntable. Well, probably now they do in hotels, but.
I stayed at a hotel recently in Phoenix, and they had Crosley cruisers in every single room, and I was super happy. And they had partnered with Stinkweeds there, who we are friends with. But it was like, okay, well, I've just been DIYing this version of this, for about 8 years. But I'm happy that I don't have to take my turntable everywhere now.
Right.
You're just ahead of the curve, Lisa. I like it. I like it. When did you guys sign on when did you sign on as a record store day store?
Yeah. So Guestroom Records is owned by my partner and his business partner. And then this store, by virtue of our relationship, is also somewhat owned by me. But Guestroom was part of the very first record store day.
Amazing.
Guestroom Records collectively is part of the Ames Coalition. And so it's actually technically part owner of the record store day brand.
Can you sort of explain what that is for people that don't know?
The Ames Coalition? Yeah. So in record stores, there are multiple different kinds of coalitions that are basically about independent record stores having better bargaining power, having better ways to talk to major labels especially, but indie labels too, because we can come together and say that 23 of us all feel about a certain release or a certain policy or a certain whatever, as opposed to one store here, one store there, one store over there. Right. There are 3 main coalitions. There's the Sims Coalition. There's the Ames Coalition, which is the Alliance of Independent Media Sellers that we are a part of, which is one of the younger coalitions. And then I hate this right now, but I forget the third one. But that's okay. They'll forgive me. It is one of the larger coalitions. So Zia Music, for example, stores that have multiple that are kind of regional chains, they make up the last coalition of stores. Okay. And you certainly can be a record store not part of a coalition. There's a lot of record stores who aren't parts of coalitions, but it is helpful to be part of one.
Yeah,
and there's different perceptions on Record Store Day, no matter who you talk to. What do you think was the benefit of joining on with Record Store Day? I mean, obviously you guys support it. Maybe you could speak to that.
Sure. Well, Record Store Day is an evolving thing. Record Store Day, when Guestroom signed on to support it in the very first iterations, was a really different thing. It was primarily about getting people to walk back into stores. And at that point in time, in the sort of mid-late 2000s, we were watching a lot of quote unquote legacy stores that had been around for ages, serving their communities, close. In Louisville, one of those was a place called Ear Ecstasy. It was one of the very first stores that I ever shopped in. Meant a lot to me. And, there was a lot of reasons for that. They're never only declining sales, but declining sales were huge because we were just moving toward a streaming area, just the beginning of the streaming era, mostly about digital consumption of music. And it was really about like saving record stores and saving the way in which record stores can be a part of that community. And the way to do that was to give people these very limited releases that you could only get at an independent store that would bring people through the doors of record stores again. And it worked, that's the brilliant thing about Record Store Day. When you look at the history of it, it took something and said, look, we want to give people a reason to come back in these stores. We're going to give them a product to come in and consume. And hopefully we're going to reintroduce them to like record stores. And in those early days, even here, we opened in Louisville in 2013. I remember people walking in for the first time and being like, wow, I didn't even know that record stores still existed. Right. And having those conversations early on was incredible. So I think, to sign on was to say, we believe in record stores like us and like others, and we want them to stay alive and vital. And that's the big reason behind it. These days, Record Store Day is gigantic. It has become a really massive event, which is like every wonderfully good big thing, complicated. There are parts of Record Store Day that I still think are so incredibly important at finding new people to come through the doors, at giving us product. But it's also really hard for a lot of stores to take part in Record Store Day because there's so many items, and your customers might expect you to carry all of those items, and that might bankrupt some small stores if they had to do that. They clearly are not doing that. They're doing what's smart for them and saying, okay, I mostly sell soul music, so I'm going to bring in soul and jazz releases. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do it. And I still think it's super beneficial. We wound up literally doubling our sales this past June from the June of 2019. And part of that is because of Record Store Day. And part of that's just because of the way that vinyl sales are rising. But I think I still definitely support Record Store Day. I'm really looking forward to it being back like on a single event, because 6 of them in a year is so crazy. We're all so tired. When you go to this last one at your local record store, just be like, thank you guys, even if it's a little sloppy.
I mean, always, any time I go into a Record Store Day scenario, I'm just like, bless you, thank you, I'll be out in a minute. Like, I try and be as small as possible, and I'm just like weaving through like stacks and aisles, and I'm like, these are the only ones that I promise I'm not going to go back. I'm just going to get these, and then I'm going to go out. And
but no, I mean, we're in a fortunate position. We're able to get most of our product. We order a whole lot. We make a lot of people happy. It's a fun day. We had a lot of people sad that they couldn't sleep outside on the sidewalk for Record Store Day. Yeah. We did one last round of appointments because when we had to make our decisions, we didn't have the latest CDC announcement that was like, okay, if you're fully vaccinated, you can probably hang out with each other and it'll be okay. Yeah. So we still did some morning appointments and then went open. And I had regular customers who I adore, just like, I mean, it's okay that I can just show up at this time whenever I want, but man, I really miss being outside with all my friends and talking about what we're going to get and showing up super early. And I was like, you all are amazing. And I do not have that DNA. I love you so much.
I mean, it's so funny to see the American version of Record Store Day versus the Canadian version of Record Store Day. Cause it's like, you guys tailgate for Record Store Day. And I'm like, I need to be there. It makes me even more hyped for it. I'm like, I want that.
this set customer has a solo stove, so when it's cold for the Black Friday version, he's like making friends, bringing his traveling little portable
Yes.
fire, like
I mean, I
going to
love
each other's
that.
weddings, I think. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yes.
And so when you talking about like the complicated, wonderful and weird nature of Record Store Day, that is really incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know the last time I camped out and made get enough friends with anybody for anything that I
Right.
didn't know already.
No, I mean, that harkens back to like waiting in line for tickets
Right.
for a
Yeah.
show. You know what I mean? Like there's kids that will listen to this podcast, obviously, and not know what it's like to stand in line for tickets and like wait for the wristband or like the lottery or whatever to get a floor seat to a show. Because
Yeah.
I remember like being 14 and going to like driving an hour and a half to the mall for the Ticketmaster booth and like waiting in line with like 800 other people so that I could get a ticket to a show. And like I loved that. I loved it. I loved waiting in line to get to the show. Like we stood in line for like 8.5 hours to get in to the floor seats for a U2 show in like 2002. But we got like on the it was the Elevation tour and we skipped a physiology
I went
test.
to that tour.
Yeah, it was amazing. The heart. We got in the heart because we waited for so long, and they were like, "You guys," and we're like, "Ah!" It was so great. But like, I still talk to some of the people that I met 20 years ago at that show.
That's cool.
It was, I mean, like that, and that's the relationship that I have with record store people. Like I talk to the guys back home, and I mean, Toronto's just been kind of a gong show, but like I think those relationships and like that interaction and like knowing you, and you like walk into your record store and you're like, "Hey Lisa, what's up?" And you know what I like, and you're like, "Oh yeah, hey, we got the new Motorhead single or whatever." Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that beast of a list.
That's always
like,
the way that's always the way when people are saying, I want to get into records, how do I find them or whatever? I'm always like, go to your local record store, talk to the person behind the counter, and that's the best way that they become your, musical sage. They teach you the way. So
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but that beast of a list is like a thing to tackle. Like it's like get a carafe of coffee and sit down and then scroll and look. And maybe print it out and highlight. And
well, now, too, because it's broken up by the different drops.
So, totally. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine what it was like to go from 3 last year to 2 this year, from going from 1 in 2019. Can you talk about how you guys had to prepare for a 3 drop versus a single day and what that kind of looked like?
Sure. Well, none of these has had any part of, for us, we haven't done any of like the community, like local shows or DJs or all that fun stuff. We're just, we'll get back to it, but we haven't been able to do any of that. So that takes a little bit of the fun out of it though, because now we're just like, okay, now we have to sell the things and get people the products they want. And then there's a little bit more pressure, right? Mm-hmm. Because, when you're not able to offer like the celebratory aspects, it's like, okay, we really have to make sure this product comes through, right? So when it went from 1 day to 3 days, we also had to reorder. So we placed orders for Record Store Day before the pandemic began. Then once it gets canceled, we have to sort of resubmit those orders and think about how much we're going to sell of Record Store Day product, time period where so many people are unemployed and hurting, and this is crazy. What are we doing? So the 3 drops was nuts, because at that point in time we were like, do people care? I don't know. Do we care? Not sure. And clearly, okay, people care. This is okay. They're still going to want these products. We'll order that way. And we definitely took down our numbers though. And the one thing that Record Store Day shifted is that, of course, we can sell everything online. So to go back to one of our earlier discussions, we had morning appointments that we did masked with 5 people at a time for 15 minutes. And then went immediately to online sales at 1:00 our time on the Eastern Standard Time.
Cool.
And we made new friends in new places. It was really fun, actually. It's like, oh, we have a friend in Miami who like sends Lady Gaga records to Cuba now, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I got one from you guys from the first.
Yeah. And so that was, so we let sort of our local folks have it first. And then we started shipping outside our local community like at 6:00 that night, I think.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, it was good. And we felt really good about it. And I still have pictures of just our staff running around with like sheets of paper and doing boxes. And the first time we did it, we were like, oh, this was super inefficient because we don't know how to be a warehouse, right? We're just a record store.
Of course.
And then the next time we got better and smarter, and we got better and smarter, and every time we got better and smarter, and so that's great. This year for the 2 drops, we knew a bit better, and we also knew that we were probably going to be able to be open in some way. And so this year felt a lot more like ordering pre-pandemic. And even though we don't have the festive events, we kind of felt like people are going to be itching to get out. It's also a time period in which, people really invested in turntables, and this podcast is so wonderful right now because I know that we have new listeners and new people getting into vinyl for the very first time. And so we were like, we're going to introduce a lot of our new customers to Record Store Day for the very first time on these next 2 drops.
Yeah.
So we really tried to do that as much as possible like we had before. And the first one went really well. Like I said, we had morning appointments, and then we were open to the public, and then we still sold stuff online that night at like 9 p.m. So
I bet your research brain kind of turned on during this last 18 months and was kind of like, oh, okay. Record Store is a hub for community engagement.
I was cleaning out a closet one day, and I honestly found my diploma, and I was like, you know what? I think I finally earned you. And I took her out and I put her in just like a crappy frame from Target with all of the student debt that she has. And I put her right on the wall by the door when I left, and I exited every day. And I was like, okay, you got this. You know how to do this. But yeah, I was really thankful to be a person who enjoys researching stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely did it a lot.
No kidding.
You were talking earlier about how some stores are sort of able to focus their product based on their market. How do you decide what to buy for Guestroom? Are you the one doing that?
I'll be honest, Travis does most of the ordering, but we sit and talk about every single order before he submits it. So I'm like his final check. And, like I have done many things in my life, and I'm happy to be sort of both insider, outsider sometimes in this thing that I've decided to do. My partner, this is all he's ever done. And so it's beautiful to watch. I don't work in the exact same way, but he can sit there in his brain and think about how many he's sold, who he knows in the store that needs it, wants it, how many we might be able to sell to new people, come up with a number. And 80% of those numbers are going to be about right on. And 20% I'll be like, oh my gosh, I know way more people want that record. And that's where it gets fun. And then we talk about it with our staff too. So he'll do the first round, and then we just sort of sit around and talk about it together and say, is there a release that we missed that we think somebody might want more of than what we've ordered? Or is there one where we've ordered way too many? And most of the time we have about 80% sell through a product, and that feels really good. So
okay. Do you guys primarily have new records, or do you have used, like a bitch and used section too?
Yeah, we are about 50-50. So yeah, we carry 50% used records in the shop. We are sitting on so many used records right now. It's so fun. We can't get through them all right now. We're just so busy. It's wild.
That's awesome.
So well, and it's like, I love new records because I love pop music, and I want to go buy the latest whatever. And then I also want to find a really beautiful old copy of something too. There's different listening experiences, and they're both really good and valid. And there's also different customers looking for different things.
Yeah.
But old records are fun, vintage and collectible vinyl is what got us into it in the first place.
Right. I mean, I'm having to buy so much stuff new just because a lot of what I'm looking for now is nostalgic stuff from the 90s, and it's either so expensive or I have to buy it new and hope somebody's reissuing it. So yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of new vinyl, is that I think one of the best things about reissue campaigns is they allow new listeners to actually collect vinyl, because otherwise unless you're somebody who likes to just dig and dig and dig and dig, you're not going to stick with it. Which is fun for those of us who do like to be like, well, I'll find it out there somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's easier ways to do that now with the beautiful internet space and lots of online platforms.
Totally.
But, being able to get a reissue until you can get that original pressing that you would like is what I always tell people. I'm like, don't you want to listen to this? It's a good record. Just buy it for $23 and then pass it along to somebody else when you find the version you really want.
Totally.
But until then, just don't you want to listen to it?
No.
Buy that record.
Yeah. Because especially right now, it might be gone. Even if it's a Beatles record, we can't keep Beatles in stock. It's crazy.
And that
That's
was one
good.
and that was one of the questions that I had was, are you seeing the effects on pressing delays? Like, is that affecting you yet?
Absolutely. So what I will say, I tend to try and see solutions instead of problems as much as humanly possible.
Bless you for having that mindset.
I know.
In
I
the
try.
vinyl space. I love it.
Yes, we are seeing those shortages, but unlike other time periods where we have seen shortages and had a release come out, for example, and then not get a restock on it for 6 months to 8 months because they didn't press enough and it's not prioritized. I do think people are prioritizing the pressing of vinyl records. We're just selling so many more. So that's, I think, a large part of why the shortages are happening. It's basic supply and demand, right? There's a higher demand than we have supply of these records coming out. I think the supplies will catch up. I think the demand will even off. I don't think it's going to crash. I don't think it's going to massively slow down. I think it will likely sustain itself after this time period. And supply will hopefully come up to meet that and we'll be fine. Yeah. So that's the way I like to think about it. Certainly, we are missing things that we could sell hand over fist if we have them in stock.
I mean, yeah, it's so true, though. I mean, like, we'll finish pressing something for someone, and then they'll need to get a repress. And it's like, even though we have the metal, the pipeline is so full that there's just nowhere to put it. And so, it could be months before it gets back to press. Yeah.
And I hope that people will start to adjust their numbers too. We sold so many Fleetwood Mac records last year. It was insane. And I just was like, we were delivering records too. I delivered Fleetwood Mac Rumors to like so many houses that had these beautiful, like, congratulations person, class of 2020, like class of 2021. I was like, all these kids are buying Fleetwood Mac records.
Yes.
So beautiful.
And that's what I was hearing.
God bless TikTok for that. I will say.
I was hearing that, like, the Gen Z market isn't so genre specific. And so they are buying more of those old reissues, so that's huge. Yeah.
It was beautiful, but we would have sold even more had we not run out of product.
Right.
So it's one of those moments where, and they're back in stock now, but I think that's the ebb and flow of that whole thing is, we need everybody to remember that however many you think you need to press, check with a record store and they might tell you that you should press more, because we're selling things more than I think that people could wrap their heads around in a way. But yeah, Gen Z is great because they're discovering music through their own media and through different channels, and they're not bound up in genres in the same way that we used to be. And it's really fun for people to rediscover something old in a new way.
Yeah. When people come into the store, do you sell equipment there? I can't remember from when I visited.
We do. We sell primarily like entry level but good turntables is what I will say. So we don't sell many turntables that are more than about $350. And for the most part, we're selling AT LP60s as fast as we can sell them.
That's amazing.
Pair those with edifier speakers. We definitely we like the Crosley portfolios as sort of a really entry-level portable for folks, and they retail for still around $100, but they have a slightly better tone arm and they last for people. We still sell some portables, and we like the Crosley C6s quite a bit for people who are looking for a specific aesthetic and are going to actively move their tone arm at the end of their listening time period.
God bless those people.
I know, I don't know, but I know that they are out there.
Well, especially as a lathe cutter, because like my records don't get along with autos. They're like, my record doesn't work, and I'm like, it does.
It does.
Your turntable doesn't work. Well, let's be specific.
Yeah. So, and it's nice. I feel like we're getting much better educated younger consumers too. So when they walk in, they will have researched turntables a little bit. And this is where I love teaching people. And so I'm just like, ooh, you want to talk about turntables? Let's talk about turntables.
Awesome.
And we use a car metaphor a lot, where it's like, look, there's a broad range of money you could spend on a car. This is about getting from point A to point B, and what your budget's like, and how much you want to invest in this, or if you just want to try it out. And we really try and give everyone the best turntable that we think will help them begin to listen to records and hopefully fall in love with it. Yeah. We don't sell a lot of used equipment because, we in Louisville don't really have a pipeline for it. Now, our business partner, Justin, in Oklahoma City, they sell a lot of used equipment because he has a couple of people who can actively work on those.
Yeah.
We're really lucky. In Louisville, Kentucky, we still have sort of a hi-fi shop. So there's a place called Magnetic Tape Recorder Company, and they still a lot of vintage stereo equipment. They fix it, they repair it, they guarantee their work. Nice. So we're not about to like try and sell some used players when we have high quality people who know how to fix things and can service people in that way. So we send people there when they are looking for higher quality audio equipment, vintage, and we try and get people started listening with most of the things that we have in our shop, or upgraded from a portable.
Totally.
That's awesome.
Do you find that the people that are coming in that are educated are spread throughout the panoply of genders and non-gender conforming humans? Like, or is it weighted heavier in one category?
I think it's across the board. I think that vinyl discourse in general has just reached a much more mainstream level. I think there's a lot more information about it. I think there's also been a lot of people, when we started having this vinyl increase of sales in the late 2000s, there weren't a lot of ready-made turntables that were affordable at your service. And some of those models were not very good. And so there's a lot more experience that they have to draw from, whether it's friends or family or blogs or podcasts. They've listened, they've done a little more research. And so when they walk in and I start kind of telling them some of the things they've already heard, I think that's really helpful. But most people aren't coming in and being like, what's this turntable about? That used to happen a lot more.
What is this?
What is this?
Do I want one of these? I don't know. It's kind of fun in here. And I'd be like, I don't know. Do you? So yeah, but I think that consumers are a lot more educated about turntables, and that makes our job a lot easier. And we try and carry products that sort of work for the majority of our customer base looking for them.
Has your demographic shifted to a younger audience, or do you still see like the same group of humans coming in that you saw before?
No, it's definitely different. We still have for the most part, we still have our same group, and we are so grateful for every single last one of them. But with the rise of different albums that are now available on vinyl, you bring those customers with you, right? So definitely more diverse, definitely larger numbers of women and younger women coming through the doors. Taylor Swift records, selling Taylor Swift records, let me tell you, is been one of my sociological highlights of my last year, because young women will get so excited, and there are men and non-binary folks and everybody loves Taylor Swift, but young women in particular feel like there's something in the store that's for them. They have a section, they know where to go. There's so many different copies of Evermore, but they want them all.
All 8 colors. Yes.
All 8 colors.
Yes.
And you know who that reminds me of? Like metal collectors or anybody else who were doing all of these pressings right before. I know, Jen.
Yeah, you got the queen on this one.
And what's so great is that the joy is the same. It doesn't matter. Just love what you love. And
yes, totally.
It's so fun to be like, okay, it's not that record stores didn't have a lot of women in them. They just didn't have as much product that maybe younger women wanted. And now that product is starting to come through the doors. And everybody should just have what they want on vinyl. Yeah, it's just but no, it's such a fun time to be in record stores because I mean, look, this is why I signed on. I wanted to have a broader space. I wanted to have a space of people that matched what I knew the politics of these stores were. And I knew that it wasn't just about serving a bunch of primarily older white male consumers. I knew that from being in the stores, that's not what they were doing. But when, CD sales declined and vinyl started coming back up, that was specifically about collectors, and collectors were primarily skewed white and male. As collectors in general tend to be, right? When you look at sort of data on material culture and collectors, they tend to be skewed more white and male.
The dudes with the money, man.
Yeah. And time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dig and find stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very different now. And we're not, we have collectible records and we have people who are passionate, and we love all of our wonderful customers. And I'm just really happy to see it grow and bloom and diversify.
Have you seen it's not just obviously those older white men that have some stereotypes against women in record stores or women in vinyl in general, but are you seeing a shift in some of that population change with the times, with seeing more of those young people in the stores?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, young people do not have the same hangups. Bless them. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
They have different hangups, I'm sure, but not the ones that we have about gender in record stores. I don't know if people are changing or if my customer base is shifting, but I was even rereading what I wrote for you on the blog in terms of what the hardest thing had been and sort of the sexism that had been incumbent in this industry, and of course still is. But I haven't dealt with it as much since the pandemic at all. And we had a really trying year, not only in relationship to COVID, but also in Louisville, Kentucky. We were as much as we could be active in sort of fights for justice for Breonna Taylor, which this was ground one for.
Yeah.
We were very vocal about that. We did lose some customers because of our politics, and that's okay. Everyone has that choice. But at the end of the day, we felt like we had to be a platform for those things. And I think we also did so much work to keep people safe. We did so much work to try and take care of our community. And let's be honest, most of the time, the people doing that kind of nurturing, caregiving work tend to be women. And I haven't had the same kind of weirdness from some customers that I had before the pandemic. And I don't know if they were just like, man, you guys worked really hard. I'm just like, gonna leave you alone.
Thankful. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
And, I never, it's one of those things where I don't take systemic inequality personally. It just is what it is. And I try and take those moments to like educate and be vocal and be vulnerable and say, look, that just wasn't really the best way to talk to me. Can we talk about that? And sometimes people want to do that and sometimes they don't. And sometimes they don't understand that the thing they think is nice and sweet is actually paternalistic and not. And I'm fairly small. I'm from the South, and those things kind of happen. But I will say
that's lovely. Bless
your heart.
Isn't it? Yeah. So, but I do think I think that everybody this year collectively as a community in my city was just like, look, this struggle is real, and we do not have time to like treat each other poorly. And so thus far, I think that we've all kind of come through it better.
I love to hear that.
That's wicked. That's so great.
Yeah.
And you kind of opened the door there and have said that there's been positive change, but I mean, what was it like when you first kind of walked through those doors and were working in the record store? Was it very much like?
No, absolutely. It was very difficult. And I I was a professor, so I got to really control my space and own space, and was respected in a particular way for being intellectually curious and all those things. The store was really interesting because I didn't realize just how invisible I could be to a human until I would be helping them and answering questions, and then they would just immediately look to Travis for answers, and he would be like, I have no idea why you're looking at me. And it was those kinds of microaggressions, as we'd come to call them, that like really were the worst, right? It was just like, I'm sorry, I may not know everything there is to do in the store, but I certainly know how to help you out something right now. And there was a learning curve for me too, because I felt at times like I don't know, I had some imposter syndrome going on because I didn't know every single record that we had in the store, and I didn't know the same kind of history that my partner did. I had a different kind of knowledge base, and I had to get to the point where I just demanded respect from people because I could help them in a different kind of way, and we didn't have to have one singular knowledge base or one singular way of like learning about things in the store. We could discover things together, for example, and that could be
weird.
I know, right?
Hey, hang on, a breadth of experience? That's weird. I mean, and being somebody that's very, very educated and very successful in their education. I mean, I did the same thing with medicine and then kind of pivoted and had worked in rock and roll and whatever, and then came into this space. And my imposter syndrome is still raging constantly every day. So I can completely sympathize. But I mean, even in the medical space, I remember suggesting things, and somebody would just look over there and they're like, why are you looking at me? She's the medical director. And I was like, I'm right here. I'm only 5'5", but jeepers. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
But it's funny how you can be super educated in one like stream. And I mean, it feeds your curiosity and it feeds your like ability to learn new things and adapt that information and whatever you're passionate about. But somebody just like has a certain stereotype or like idea of what that person that works in a record store is going to be. And it's just like, how dare you ever have gone to university, Lisa? Why would you be a professor and work at a record store? How dare you?
What is happening? And then I like break the news to them. I'm like, everyone in here is like basically 30 and they all have at least a degree and maybe a half, and and another job. And
because you like it. It's weird.
And we're all just passionate about music, you guys, like in different ways. Yeah.
Oh man.
So
and how did Travis like address those situations with you? Like, did you guys debrief after that? And was he like, oh, it happened again, I'm sorry?
There was a lot of, that sounded a lot like him. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Is
he from Canada?
Oklahoma's underneath Canada, right?
I mean, kind of. They didn't teach geography at my university. I can't really remember.
No, I think it was a real learning experience for him. He did not know that these latent attitudes about, gender dynamics were so at the forefront of the record store experience. In fairness, I also did not know. Because
the hidden secret of record stores in the music business. It's like,
yeah, I mean, I think, look, record stores are spaces that have validated people, and that is one of the things that is really important about them. But I think that something went a little weird, right? When we went through this shift and a lot of stores closed, and then it became sort of more and more and more niche. As it became more and more niche, we started validating more and more niche community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the struggle became, oh wait, I don't remember like in the 90s when I was driving up to Ear Ecstasy feeling weird about going in the record store. Even though most of the people who worked there were men, there were still a lot of women around. And I don't remember it having this kind of odd gender dynamic, though I know that that was still there. And I don't know, I think there's something to the fact that like as it became more and more niche for a while, it became a lot less diverse population. People didn't have to really wrestle with diversity or other genders in that space in most places, even though we were all still around. And I think a primary way of knowledge became sort of like the guy who just knew everything about all the things. I blame high fidelity narratives for overtaking record store narratives, but also probably a different past. And, I think that was just really hard because people came to expect a certain thing from a record store. And then when a woman was in it and she was smart and different, that was hard for some people and welcoming and wonderful for others.
Totally.
So.
Yeah. I feel bad for Travis.
No, but I will say, I love my partner very much, and it was a learning curve for him. And, there weren't that many customers in the early days, but there were some where I was just like, you know what, I'm going to excuse myself for this. And that's probably the best, again, not many, but a few where it's just like, okay, I'm just going to walk outside.
2%?
Yeah, 2%. 2%. I should probably not be here because I don't want to feel invisible again today. So I'm going to go clean the bathroom or whatever.
I'm going to retire to the conservatory. Goodbye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'll be reading my public sphere theory outside on the bench.
I'm just going to go put on my professor uniform and go at the back. Bye now. I'm gonna clean off my diploma over here.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that like he was shocked, and I remember I had it was really fun. At one of the record store day conferences, Carrie invited me just to talk about women in record stores, and this is probably about 2016. It was actually right before sort of Me Too happened, and I think that the Me Too movement really helped a whole lot. Women's stories becoming first and foremost in so many different areas of our lives was huge. So literally right before all of those things start to break, I got to do this talk just about women in record stores to so many well-meaning record store owners who aren't femme, who are mostly white male. And I remember at the end of it, I got the standing ovation, and I know, right? And I did the same thing. I was just like, oh my God, you guys, like I've talked so many times. I've given so many lectures in my whole life. I've never gotten a standing ovation. And it was this moment where they were so grateful to just be like, thank you for tips. Thank you for strategies. Thank you for your voice. We all want these 2%ers to not be this way and go. And this helps us stand up and make space in a different way. And it was really beautiful. I felt.
I have to say, like, the vinyl community of people that work in this industry are so amazing and supportive.
Absolutely.
I mean, we see the same thing with women in vinyl. Everybody really is encouraging and supportive of the brand. And I think that the 2% just speaks so loudly.
Yeah.
That's why it's still a problem, because those people that maybe are on the fence one way or the other just hear that constantly because they're just so... They're like the trolls, the internet trolls.
They're prominent. They're a prominent voice, and they're a loud voice. I mean, it's an incredible thing to have somebody with your background to be able to speak to that with a very specific knowledge and like focus and lens to be able to like identify how that actually like works in these spaces and the way that these spaces are supposed to be reinforcing and help to gel a cause rather than, separate everybody. But I mean, I wonder how much of it is like having kind of like genre specific stores where, there's always like, there's a really great Jamaican dub reggae store here in Toronto. And like, that's all that they sell. And then there's like a bitch and punk rock store. And I mean, like, people will go to both stores obviously, but there's some people that won't, their paths won't cross. So, I mean, it's nice to have some of those bigger stores that cater to a lot of genres to be able to make sure that those people have the incidents to cross paths. Like there's that moment where you're like digging through things and there's a guy on the other side and they're digging through a thing and you're like, oh yeah. And everybody turns and you're like, and everybody's like so jacked that you got the record that you're like so excited about.
Yeah. I do love those moments. I love it when the store, all of a sudden, the customers themselves are like doing your job for you and they're having so much fun.
Yes.
You know, like, oh, I know where that, literally, I will watch
Yes.
people be, oh, I know where that record is. And I was like, you don't, okay. I mean, you don't have to. I appreciate you.
Yeah, that's me. That's me.
I'm the one that's like cleaning the bins, like straightening them back out from those evil people that leave them flopped over. I'm always like straightening everything up. I'm like, I can't take it.
I appreciate you.
I'm like
out badges for record store customers. Like, I saw you push the record.
Do it. Oh my God. Can we start like a merit badge system for all of the record stores? Like, oh, you tidied the bins today. You get you get this badge. Oh, that would be so fun. Oh man. I love it. That's so good.
As we start to kind of wrap up here, what is the most exciting release or old record that you have in your collection, and what release are you most looking forward to that's coming out?
Well, so for Record Store Day, I am really oddly excited about this Karen O and Willie Nelson 7-inch that's coming out.
Oh yeah.
To me, that's what Record Store Day is about, is like these really beautiful items that show you, I mean, the beautiful collaboration of musical artists and remind you why it matters. I don't know. I'm just so excited about that. In my personal collection, that is a really good question. I would say I really love the artist Juana Molina. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with her. Mm-mm. She's a Latin American sort of folk electronic artist, and her early records have been really hard to come by. And so last summer, for my birthday, Travis got those for me. And
awesome.
So I now have pretty close to a full Juana Molina catalog. And I remember I got to see her perform. She's one of the first people who kind of started doing like live looping and those kinds of things, but made it like really interesting and beautiful. And I love electronic music, and I love watching artists like do it right in front of my face. So yeah, I have her discography, and that's probably the thing that I'm happiest about having, especially through quarantine and all of those times. We were supposed to see her live in Chicago. It's one of the shows that I lost to the thing that shall not be named, but I'll see her again soon. But yeah, my Juana Molina records are my favorite records for sure.
That's awesome.
Nice. Very cool. I'm going to have to check it out now.
Yeah, totally.
Out. Yeah.
I love it. And we'll put it in the show notes so everybody can check it out.
Yeah, please do.
Absolutely. That's one of my favorite things about what I get to do with this podcast is be like, oh, let's find some weird music and get everybody geeked on it, because that's the coolest. Yeah. So with that in mind, if you could make a custom 7-inch record with anybody on the A side and anybody on the B side, it can be any decade, any year, anytime. What would your dream 7-inch be?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So
I know it's on the spot. Nobody knows.
I'm just gonna go. Shoot. What is the? All right. So, off the cuff, I want so badly RuPaul's version of Work. Right. So badly. And I was so jealous when Jim posted her, like, 30 Days of Vinyl. I have this. And both Travis and I were like, what? How do you have that? Where did you get it? Why don't we have it? We're so sad. I was like, all I want is a 7-inch. It was just this one track. So
I know.
On side A.
Amazing.
I love this.
Yeah.
Continue.
This is the best. This is the best one we've had so far, in my opinion.
I know. I'm a eclectic music connoisseur. And then I would probably put Just for Balance, because I think it would make a good party RuPaul on side A, Todd Terje's remix of Dolly Parton's Jolene on the B side.
Oh, all right. I could get into this.
Yeah.
You
Very
should,
Yeah.
cool.
I think you should bring this to the RSD coalition and be like, all right,
Oh,
Black- for next
I
year, my
need
friends.
this RuPaul situation to happen for real. I want a
Yes.
box set. I want glitter in it.
Oh, I mean, all she has to do is just get Trixie Mattel to sponsor that part, and then you can have all the glitter in the
Yeah.
world. Yeah. That's cool. I think we need to make this an annual celebration where we talk to you about Record Store Day.
Well, I would love that. It's very fun. You've got me excited for it again. I'm like
Oh,
gonna
good.
do my little face mask, and take some B12, and
Put some cucumber slices on your eyeballs.
hand out popsicles instead of donuts.
Oh, that's cute. I love that.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
So thank you again, Lisa, for joining us in between your Record Store Day drops for 2021. You have weathered the storm and come out with a smile on your face and an appreciation for your customer base, and we appreciate you for it. Thank you to our friends from Laybare Recordings and to Rosy Finch for the use of their song Black Lodge. Please check out womeninvinyl.com for past episodes and the amazing archive of interviews, including our interview with Lisa Foster. The Women in Vinyl store is full of incredible things, including Women in Vinyl branded groove washer care kits, t-shirts, enamel pins, and now bitch and slip mats. You can check it out at womeninvinyl.com/store. If you want to start your own vinyl career, you can check it out on the job board. Get those jobs, friends. Get those jobs. And as always, join the conversation on Instagram or send us a note at media@womeninvinyl.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a review on your favorite podcast delivery method. You can also contribute to furthering our mission at patreon.com/womeninvinyl, where you'll find all the B-sides, deep cuts, and amazing extras, and help us to start a not-for-profit to further the demystification, education, and infiltration of more women and non-binary identifying humans into the making vinyl space. Thanks so much for listening to the Women in Vinyl podcast. Keep it analog, friends. See you soon.
This episode has been brought to you by Women in Vinyl and Red Spade Records. Thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe, and you can always contact us directly by visiting www.womeninvinyl.com.